Welcome back to some new r/PettyRevenge stories, where people share small victories over those who wronged them. I hope you had a great day. Thanks for all the likes and comments on the last video. And now let's start with the first story. It's called Smallest Bills. An older lady requested her check, and there was no issue printing it out. The total came to just over $4. Without even glancing at the amount, she placed a $100 bill on top of it. Wanting to be helpful, a polite question was asked to see if she happened to have anything smaller. Since she hadn't looked at the total, there was a chance she didn't realize how small the amount was. Maybe she had a $5 bill, or preferred to use a card instead. Of course, it was understood that people who pay with a large bill often do so because they don't have anything smaller. But given the benefit of the doubt seemed reasonable. Her response was immediate and firm, making it clear that no smaller bills were available. That was perfectly fine. The change came to $95, and there was still a couple of 20s left that could have been given as part of the change. However, considering the situation, the decision was made to break it up into smaller denominations. 5 $1 bills, 5 5s, and the rest in 10s. Sometimes a little extra effort is needed to match the energy of the moment. The next story is called Lemon Car. About 10 years ago, a 3-hour drive was made to purchase a very specific car. Everything seemed fine, until about an hour into the drive home, the car suddenly broke down. Fortunately, right near a garage. A mechanic took a look and quickly determined that the seller had covered up an issue with the piston rings, and repairing it would cost more than the car itself. Attempts were made to contact the seller to discuss the situation, but all calls were ignored and no responses were given to messages. Every effort was made to remain polite with no hostility or harsh words, just a genuine attempt to have a conversation about the issue. After a couple of days with no response, frustration set in. It was then remembered that the seller had an older phone that could only handle text messages up to a certain length, before splitting them into multiple messages. Meanwhile, a more modern phone was available on the other end. Taking advantage of this, the entire works of Shakespeare were copied, pasted into a message, and sent. For about a week, the seller's phone continuously received messages, arriving every second as soon as it was turned on. In the end, a refund was issued and the car was returned to its original owner. The third story is called Tolls. While working for the toll authority before electronic tolling was introduced, a driver pulled up with a toll of about $5. Instead of handing over bills or larger coins, he held out cupped hands full of pennies and nickels with a grin, clearly amused by the situation. After accepting the change, the coins needed to be carefully counted to ensure the correct amount was received. The driver had no choice but to wait during the process. As the pennies were stacked, they occasionally toppled over, requiring the count to restart a couple of times. By the end of the process, it turned out he had overpaid by 20 cents. The extra amount was returned, and with that the transaction was completed. He was finally free to continue on his way. The next story is called A New Rule. Years ago, while working in a kitchen, the team would often start cleaning up early on slow nights to be ready to leave right after closing. If a customer arrived, everything would be set up again to prepare their order, but finishing early was usually worth the effort. One evening, a front of house manager seemed to be in a bad mood and wanted to assert authority. A new rule was put in place, stating that no cleaning or closing tasks could begin until given permission. The following night, the kitchen staff decided to follow the rule to the letter. While the front of house team finished their tasks quickly, the cook stood by, waiting with amused expressions. After about 30 minutes, the manager finally asked why nothing had been started. The response was simple. The team was still waiting for permission, as instructed. The realization that this would lead to staying late, and that overtime pay was not in the budget, was met with a priceless expression. The last story is called TV Revenge. This story takes place in the early 2000s, when digital TV recording was still a relatively new technology. In my first job after college, I had a boss who never took me seriously, dismissed my hard work, ignored my input on hiring decisions, and generally overlooked my contributions. When asked about my 5-year career plan, I confidently stated that I aimed to take on a higher role, one that, in reality, I was already handling without the proper title or pay. Despite my efforts, my work went unrecognized, while leadership roles were given only to male colleagues, with women largely placed in assistant or support positions. The work environment was so discouraging that I often had to find a quiet place to collect myself during lunch breaks. One holiday season, he hosted a department party at his home, where he eagerly talked about someone he had recently started dating. He was especially proud of his apartment, and in particular his very expensive television, which he used to keep up with the latest popular shows. He often spoke about his concerns over aging, even in his 30s, and made a point to stay current by watching what he considered the trendiest entertainment. While he was distracted at the party, I saw an opportunity for a little harmless fun. I set reminders on his TV for the most over-the-top, embarrassing adult content I could find, scheduling them to pop up during the shows he loved to watch. But I didn't stop at just one. I made sure those reminders were set to appear for months to come, making it seem as though he had bookmarked them himself. At precisely 7 p.m, his TV would helpfully announce that it was time for some adult entertainment. He never figured out who was responsible. Thanks for watching the video to the end. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. Also, if you want to support me further, check out the channel membership or Patreon. And now, I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.